First of all, thank you to everyone for joining. Welcome to Keystream's webinar on the new Labour government's impact on digital transformation programmes within central government. So I just wanted to start off by doing a couple of introductions, basically. So first of all, wanted to introduce you to our business, Keystream. So we're the CCS framework's #1 supplier of interim tech staff to the public sector. So we've got over 600 interims currently supporting major digital transformation programs across a range of public sector organisations. We work with pretty much all the major central government departments in DDAT, so digital data and technology, but we've got a particular specialism in digital transformation. So that's going to be the sort of core focus for the discussion topics today. So yeah, just wanted to introduce everyone to the panel, if that's okay. There's lots of Jameses on the call, as you might have seen. So James Cook is known as Jim, so I'll refer to James Cook as Jim. So yeah, Jim has 12 years technical or tech central government recruitment experience, and previously led the interim recruitment team at one of the UK's largest central government recruiters. So very, very experienced. And then coming on to James Tissier. So James is also a very experienced central gov recruiter. He's got over 10 years agency experience and also 5 years working as the National Client Relationship Manager for Capita. So he supported some of the biggest central government departments, DWP, Ministry of Justice and the Pensions Regulator, to name just three. Before we start, we're going to have some an opportunity for some questions at the end, your questions. If you could just put any of those into the chat, that would be most appreciated. So if we run out of time at the end of the session and we've allowed an hour, then we'll make sure we come back to you subsequently and make sure all of those questions are answered. But yes, now coming on to the discussion topics. So the first question I wanted to put to the panel was, what do you think are the key elements of the Labour manifesto that will influence digital transformation projects in the public sector? And I was going to put that question to James Letizier.
Thanks, James. Well, the Labour manifesto outlines several key elements that focuses on using technology to improve public services. And that's what they say in turn will enhance all of the transparency and efficiency. So firstly, and there are a few things in here, I think there are probably 5 core areas that I'll come on to. But firstly, there is the investment in digital infrastructure and digital upgrades. We now know that Labour plans to invest heavily in upgrading and enhancing digital infrastructure, which means that there will definitely be that need for additional tools, but also resources to support those digital projects. And these are projects, I mean, there are a number of them, but we're talking about projects like the expansion of high-speed internet access across the country and upgrading outdated or legacy systems, or putting paper-based systems online. There's also, and we'll also see a greater emphasis on cybersecurity, and ensuring the security of digital systems will absolutely be a priority. So in Labour's manifesto, it highlights commitments to robust cybersecurity measures to protect public data and systems from cyber threats. And that is all absolutely crucial for the success and trust in these digital transformation projects, which the public will then go on undoubtedly to use. So as we know, anything the government puts as an online platform must be robust, must be secure for obvious reasons. One of the other pledges that Labour have put forward is to improve digital skills and training. So I know, as everyone else does, that without a digitally skilled workforce, the government simply can't deliver on its digital manifesto. So what Labour plans to do is invest in training programmes for public sector employees as a whole. Essentially, that's going to give staff the skills, the necessary skills to manage and implement these digital transformation projects effectively. Then there's an emphasis on user-centric service design, or UCD. And this relates to designing public services around the needs of users and ensuring that digital solutions are accessible and easy to use. So this approach aims to improve 2 things: user satisfaction and the public's engagement with those public services. And then finally, an interesting point, and it's something that I think Labour will push on, which is the collaboration with the private sector. So the manifesto supports all of those partnerships between the public and private sectors to leverage the expertise, the technology, the innovation from the tech industry, essentially to enhance the capability of digital transformation projects within central government. And I think it's kind of commonly and widely known that some of that tech industry is quite a bit further forward than government and the public sector with its digital transformation, hence that need for collaboration. So I think just to finally sort of close off the question, those key elements collectively will aim to create a digitally capable, secure government that's able to deliver all of these sort of efficient, transparent and user-friendly services to the public.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, James. Really interesting. And yeah, very interesting to hear your points about Labour's sort of willingness, I guess, to engage with private sector organisations in order to support digital transformation. Thank you very much indeed. Next question will be for Jim. Jim, so how do you see Labour's commitment to change manifesting in the public sector over the next year? So what specific initiatives or project priorities should we expect to emerge?
Cool. Yeah, thanks, James. And hi, everyone. So I think change was quite clearly, if you're following the campaigns, was clearly at the heart of the Labour manifesto. It's the one thing they sort of mainly campaigned on, and so as you would expect, really, there's an expectation to deliver real change within the public sector, and there's going to be a lot of scrutiny as to how they go about that. You read the Labour manifesto, and there was a lot of criticism during the campaign that there was a lot of it was quite light on detail. I'm not giving a political opinion here, but I think generally my thoughts are that if you look at other campaigns in the past, they've also been quite light on these types of things because they're often a government in waiting. And so my point being is there's still a lot to be seen in terms of how they're going to implement this change. But the way that they're going to actually go about this is growing the economy. That's the main thing that a lot of the Labour MPs are talking about at the moment. That's how they're going to afford the money that needs to be spent on the things that need to help them achieve their goals. So growing the economy requires multifaceted strategies, lots of innovation, infrastructure development, workforce enhancements. There's going to be lots of different ways that they're going to go about actually delivering this change. But as James Le Tissier has just mentioned, IT and tech are going to be right at the heart of all of that. But just to go through a couple of, initiatives and project priorities as we're asking the question. Investment in infrastructure and green technology, so infrastructure development, boosting spending on transportation, digital connectivity, housing, enhancing sort of productivity and creating jobs, sort of pushing modern infrastructure, creates business and supports economic growth. So all of that stuff is going to enable the economy to grow, enable the public sector to get better. And within all of that, again, you read through the Labour manifesto, and there's lots in there about trying to get past red tape, trying to make decisions better. I think it's one of the things that we are not very good at as a country is productivity. We're not very good at generally. We're quite low in the EU at making decisions and finishing projects as quickly as other countries. And so that's one of the things that Keir Starmer is going to really try and push, is to stop wasting money and deliver projects better. And I think that's all going to enhance the market in terms of jobs. And then green technologies and renewables energies as well. Investing in renewables is going to be, again, right at the heart of what they're trying to achieve. There's Great British Energy, which they're creating. And, there was a lot of disappointment when Keir Starmer sort of reneged on the 80 billion or whatever it was that he promised. But again, if you read the manifesto, there's clearly going to be a lot of wealth creation around green technologies. And I think investing in that is going to be one of the things that a lot of the private sector are going to be doing. But again, the there's going to be a lot of job creation within public sector as well. Moving on, support and innovation and entrepreneurship is going to be another key factor. Research and development, increasing funding and tax incentives to stimulate growth. So making sure that we're keeping on top of AI, keeping on top of biotech, advanced manufacturing. Again, encouraging public and private partnerships to leverage expertise and resources. The National Wealth Fund, again at the heart of the Labour manifesto, is something that I still don't know a huge amount about in terms of how they're actually going to deliver the National Wealth Fund, but it's quite an exciting thing potentially if it does happen, in terms of being able to get money from government to develop new things. So if you're young, just out of uni, or from an apprenticeship or whatever, and you're wanting to do something new, the National Wealth Fund could be quite a good opportunity. Moving on, workforce development and education. Again, skills training and education, focusing on STEM, focusing on making adaptability, so making sure that the public sector, civil servants and people working in the public sector can adapt to new ways of working, whether that be agile, whether that be AI, whatever it might be. There's going to be money there that's going to be spent on making sure that we're more up to date. In terms of the costs of all of this, again, it's light in the manifesto in terms of how much it's going to cost, because a lot of it is costed in terms of taxations and things. So it's around 40 billion over the 5 years. So you can break that up over the years, obviously, but there will be more money spent. There's going to be more taxation, probably, and so huge amounts of investment, lots of opportunities.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, Jim. Really interesting to get that sort of macro perspective about how wider economic, or more general economic growth, is hopefully going to support Labour's commitment to change. So yes, next discussion topic, and I'd like to put this to James Tissier. What immediate reforms has the new Labour government pledged that will impact current and upcoming projects within central government? So focus on immediate reforms, and how should professionals in the public sector prepare for these changes?
Thanks, James. Well, I'll speak around some of the specific reforms and some examples there. Then I've got sort of a few maybe more general sort of reform areas from Labour that I can come on to, and then I'll answer the second part of the question in terms of how you can prepare for those changes. So one of the very first things that the Labour government has done is to look at economic growth through science and technology. So what they've done is taken probably the first steps towards building a modern digital government. So that department, or the department responsible for that, will be the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology. So they're known as DSIT. DSIT will expand in both scope and size. So they're bringing in some departments to DSIT. They are GDS, the Government Digital Service, CDDO, the Central Digital and Data Office, and IAI, which is the incubator for AI. So basically what the aim is to unite digital transformation under just one department. And the thought is that it'll improve the public's experience of interacting with government, so it becomes more personalised, more convenient, so that it saves people time, which is great for all of us. So just to give an example on that, by basically providing people with just one way to log in and prove who they are, for example, allows that individual to quickly access government services that they need through one platform and one login. So it will also help with things like sharing data across the public sector as a whole. So it'll allow departments to talk to one another. Like anything, it will take time to kind of see how successful this is. But I'm a big believer that with change comes opportunity. So this is a department that may create lots more opportunities over the short, medium, and long term. The other reform we can probably touch on is the secure borders reform, which no doubt is going to create new projects that require these project management skills to develop policies, and to create digital platforms in order for Labour to deliver against kind of their reform for border security. A couple of other things that they've set up: the Great British Energy Company and the Great British Railways. So Great British Energy is a new publicly owned British energy company, and their plan will create what they say is 650,000 jobs across the country over the next 6 years by 2030. Great British Railways is a department that will help Labour fully nationalise the train network. So what they pledge kind of around that is to guarantee cheap fares as part of the biggest reform of our railways for a generation. When we talk about, well, what type of opportunities and jobs is this going to create? We don't necessarily know, but what I'm pretty sure on is that it will include two things, which is some form of change or digital transformation, and also within that, it means that there will be several project teams stood up to deliver the reform that's needed. Other more general reforms that kind of Labour have talked about that will likely impact current and upcoming projects are pretty much around a lot of the things we've already discussed: digital upgrades, expansion of sort of current digital services, an increased focus on data privacy and cybersecurity, promoting digital and skills development, supporting things like emerging technologies, and also, quite importantly, changes in policies, which will drive a lot of change. So then, coming on to the sort of second part of that that question that James has put to me: how should you prepare for these changes? Well, I think the first thing is to try and keep up to date with some of these things that I've just talked through and sort of departments that are being stood up. But I would suggest evaluating your current skills and identifying any gaps. You can invest in things like training programs. You can research online. You can upskill yourself in kind of your specialist area, whether that's digital, cybersecurity, or it might just be kind of researching these emerging technologies. You can also review current departmental policies and procedures against what the new requirements are and what the best practices might look like going forward. And from that, you can identify any changes and where you could improve your understanding or knowledge within a certain area. If not already, I would suggest using all your agile methodologies, having a focus on user-centered design. We already know this is kind of a key emphasis for the Labour government to ensure those digital services are stood up and meet the needs of the public effectively. And then you could also be speaking to your colleagues, your peers. You can have an input into forums. You can be idea sharing and just generally gaining a better understanding of change within departments, change that's happening now or change that will happen in the future. So I think if you prepare in the right way for these reforms, essentially, you'll be creating lots and lots of new opportunities for yourself. And I hope that answers the question, James.
Yeah, that was brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, James. Really interesting to hear those specific examples and also to give some, direct sort of guidance and advice in terms of, PubSec professionals preparing for these changes. So thank you very much for that. Next question's for Jim. What strategies can PubSec professionals employ to thrive in a rapidly evolving governmental landscape under Labour's leadership? So obviously with the new government, we're expecting, a sort of rapid process of change. And what strategies can PubSec professionals employ to really get ahead in that environment, Jim?
Yeah, thanks, James. I think, really interesting question. I think I'm probably going to cover a little bit of what James has just talked about there.
Absolutely.
But I think, new government in power, new leadership, new people working will require people in the working sector, public sector, whether that be contractors, civil servants, consultancies, to adapt to these new priorities and pledges. There's, inevitably there's a transition period, and there's potentially new ways of working. And I guess the Labour government has, it's a very unique point in time, isn't it? It's not often in this country where we have such a big majority, such a big change in terms of priorities, away from what we had before into into what this new Labour government is at least trying to achieve. Whether or not they do is obviously remains to be seen. But I think there are some things that you can do to adapt to that as best as possible to this new world, and try to, I guess, ride the wave as best you can to be a part of it, to benefit from it in terms of where these potential opportunities are. So I'll try not to cover. I'll try to cover some of the things that James hasn't already mentioned. But I think number one is stay informed and adaptable, continuous learning. Making sure that you're developing yourself as much as possible, making sure you're aware of what other people do within within the department, within the organisation that you're working for, to stay adaptable, whether that be policies, technologies, best practice, and policy awareness is really important as well. Understanding where the potential policy changes and priorities might be, adapt to those new things. Again, sounds quite obvious, but again, it's just part of the conversation. Covering a little bit of what James said, but just briefly, embracing innovation and technology, digital transformation, utilizing digital tools. As James mentioned already, moving from paper sometimes to tech, moving from using one operating system to using another one. This tech is coming whether we like it or not sometimes, and I think trying to be a part of that change as opposed to sometimes battling against it is something that we need to embrace. It improves efficiency and enhances service delivery at the end of the day. Data-driven decision making in that as well, leveraging data analytics to inform decisions, predict trends, measure the impact of policies and programs. That's all stuff that other people did before because it was all very techy and but now you've got things like ChatGPT and you've got things that are a lot more accessible. I'm not saying rely completely on those kinds of things, but it can keep you informed and it can help you to make better decisions. And so whether or not you want to train in something or just keep yourself up to date with something, embracing that technology can be really, really helpful. Fostering collaboration and networking, again, James sort of briefly mentioned it as well, but interdepartmental collaboration. I think everyone on this call from Keystream can say that they've been part of programs where they've maybe just worked with one department who have implemented something that's cost them millions of pounds, and another department are about to embark on the same thing, and they're not talking, and actually it's failed over here, but they're about to do the exact same thing. And so collaboration, meeting with people, going for a beer or a coffee or a drink or whatever, and collaborating can be really, really powerful. And there's a lot more openness in that, I would say, within government to try and do that, but it only happens if people talk. And within that as well, public partnerships, public-private partnerships, even engaging with the private sector to again find that synergy. We've sort of covered that already, but private sector are spending a lot more money on AI and research and development than public sector at the moment, but it is moving heavily in that direction. Again, if you read the manifesto, trying to embrace technology is going to be right at the heart of it. Strong leadership and management skills. I think if you can develop that in yourself, if you've got it within you, if you maybe you found that you're good at strategy thinking, or you're good at managing people, or you're good at crisis management, or you can sort of see sometimes where something's going to go wrong and point it out to someone. Develop that within yourself. Go on a Prince 2, go on an Agile course, because all of that stuff is attractive on CVs, and so those I think it's becoming a lot more necessary for people to have some kind of leadership capability, and within that, change management as well. It is a separate thing. There's project management and there's change management, and often they can go together. So understanding how organizations have to change to effectively navigate transitions, fostering a culture of adaptability is really, really important. I'm going to move past some of these points just because I don't think we've got that much time. This is an interesting one. Cultivate a positive organizational culture. I think sometimes it can be quite negative. If you find yourself in an organization where it feels like nothing's going right, or you're frustrated with management or whatever, just trying to be positive. Again, it sounds really obvious, but employee well-being is so important, and happy people do good jobs, and so I think just trying to focus on the good things, trying to focus on where organizations are making positive changes, and try and push that, foster that within what you're doing as well is really important.
Brilliant.
And I think
that's fantastic. Oh, sorry, carry on, Jim. Sorry.
No, all I was going to say was I was going to give a very brief working example within the transport sector, where I've been focusing on a little bit more over the last few months. I've been working with a couple of combined authorities across the UK, and a lot of their funding is in the transport space, and bus franchising is happening across the UK. Transport for Greater Manchester have just done it, and it's sort of an insight, I think, into where organisations have to transform and change, because you look at bus franchising, they're having to take on all of the stuff that the bus operators did before, and all of that stuff is none of the stuff that that these public sector organisations have done in the past, and so they're having to transform quite substantially to get up to date with new technology, with new ways of working, with making decisions really, really quickly, which doesn't happen in the public sector. And so bus franchising, rail franchising, James mentioned it, is happening. Those, the transport industry is a area where you're seeing that level of change and transformation happening really, really rapidly, and really potentially really positively, and you can sort of see that it's not just in that area, but it's a good microcosm of where that change is happening. And I can talk more about that, but we haven't got much time.
Brilliant. No, thank you, Jim. Some great tangible examples there, and really useful to get that perspective from your particular specialism within the transport space. So thank you very much indeed for that. Next question's for James. What new opportunities do you foresee arising in public sector project management, specifically under the new Labour government? And beyond that, I wondered if there's any specific types of projects or sectors that are likely to see more focus and funding with the new government in power.
Okay, well, I think this will be music to lots of people's ears, in that I think there will be lots more opportunities within the project management space, primarily given that commitment to modernise the government even further through digital transformation. And it could be, project management, as we all know, is such a sort of big area, but we're talking about potential policy-led projects, tech and digital projects, change-related projects. And so there's going to be opportunities in all these areas. But obviously, we're looking at more so at digital transformation projects as a whole. And we know that Labour's emphasis on upgrading the digital infrastructures, expanding digital services, will therefore inevitably create numerous opportunities within those sort of few areas I've just spoken through within these projects, and for all these sort of good project management skills. So we see a lot of these projects aimed at things like digitising public records, developing new digital platforms, and implementing advanced technologies, things like AI, which has kind of always been a buzzword, but I do think we're going to start to see a lot more sort of AI being incorporated into some of these projects and programs. But quite broadly, again, there are likely to be opportunities in a number of sectors, just kind of coming on to your second point, that I think we'll see more focus and more funding. The healthcare sector is a big one. I think the healthcare sector will look to continue to enhance service delivery and patient outcomes. Some of the types of things I think will include projects to sort of modernise healthcare infrastructure, implementing things like electronic health records, and integrating kind of telehealth services, so providing services at a distance and not necessarily face-to-face. There'll be significant investment in education and skills. These will be around projects like developing digital curricula and deploying educational technologies. All those areas will see an increase in funding. Labour also plans to address the housing shortages and to improve urban infrastructure. That is definitely going to result in a surge of projects related to things like affordable housing, urban renewal, or redevelopments and kind of smart city technologies. We're going to see tons of investment in public transport and infrastructure. We know, again, this is a key priority for Labour. One of the things I've already sort of spoken through and about are the plans to nationalise the railway. And we will see kind of big projects stood up in order to support that. And then finally, there'll be an increased focus on cybersecurity. So there'll be projects dedicated to enhancing the security of government systems, implementing new data protection, and going back to sort of training staff on cybersecurity best practices. So I think that I can quite confidently suggest that there's going to be significant opportunities for those with kind of these project management skills in all of those sort of sectors and areas I've spoken through. I think it's quite difficult at this kind of early point to specifically talk about individual departments or programs, because I think Labour is still working their way through things. And perhaps if anyone would like a conversation with me following this, we could kind of get more into the detail. But I hope that just kind of gives an overview to answer your question, James.
Yeah, that's really useful. Thanks very much, James. And interesting that you mentioned cyber, because that was actually the next sort of discussion topic that I wanted to bring up. Cybersecurity obviously being such a critical area in the public sector. I'm sure many of you will have seen the recent high-profile breaches within the healthcare sector, which obviously have huge implications for patient care. And as I said, something I wanted to discuss next. So in fact, that is my next question is, how will Labour's reforms influence cybersecurity initiatives and job opportunities? I know it was touched upon by James there, but I'd like to put that question to Jim, particularly taking into account, how critical this area is at the moment within PubSec.
Yeah, it's a critical area. I think it always has been a critical. Well, I say always, for a long time now, it has been a very, very critical area. You just mentioned, James, about the breaches within NHS. Massive impact, and the the fact that a lot of these organisations in the NHS have poor data, and so if there is a breach, it's often can be very, very damaging, and so cyber security often has to come alongside of proper data management and the implementation of smarter tools to get and use data better as well, and then eventually bring in AI. But to focus on cybersecurity, there's also defence, right? We live in a much more dangerous world now, unfortunately. That I think a lot of the obviously the new government is aware of that. The old government promised 2.5% on defence spending, and cybersecurity will be a part of that as well. And so I think it's right there at the top of the priorities, because everything's online now. Obviously, it has been for a while, but it's moving even more so in that direction. You've got massive multi-billion-pound data companies that run our lives, and so the impact of countries that are potentially a threat to us, like Russia or China, and the impact that could have on our day-to-day life is huge, and so the cybersecurity area is going to continue to get more and more investment, and it is an area uniquely, I think, within public sector where there is a lot more investment in brand new technologies, because they just need to have the latest stuff to make sure that we're on top of things. So in terms of the impact on job opportunities, obviously there's going to be a creation of new cybersecurity jobs. That's the gradual evolution, and there's gradually more and more. If you look across the last 10-15 years, these jobs have become more and more important, and cybersecurity professionals are sitting at the top with the IT teams and reporting into the heads of these businesses to make sure that they're on top of these things. So cybersecurity jobs it's a good thing to invest in if you're looking at changing jobs, if you're looking at maybe a new area to get into cyber. There's going to be guaranteed jobs there for the long-term future, I would say, and there's a demand for skills in this area. There is a shortfall. Contractors make a killing at the moment in that sector, because there aren't enough people that know what they're doing at a really good level, and so training and developing in that is going to be really key for the government as well to try and train their own people. So if you're currently working in a department, maybe ask someone about cybersecurity and how you can potentially train in something to increase your knowledge and potentially work your way into a cyber role, because they're going to be important. Partnerships with educational institutions could be really key as well. You do find we've got some of the best universities in the world, and you do find that often these people coming out of university are taken up by the big tech firms, by the financial institutions or whatever, that are paying a lot more than what the public sector tends to pay, and it tends to be civil servants that have a heart of gold, that want to make an impact for the public sector, are the ones that move into the public sector, and they need to be looked after. But I think there needs to be an initiative, and there will be initiatives from what I've heard and from what I've read in the Labour manifesto, to try and attract those types of people. Again, so if you're just out of university, that's something you can maybe invest in. But yeah, I think generally cyber is going to be really key priority, and if you want to get into it, it's a good place to be.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jim. Yeah, and I totally echo those thoughts. I think it's a highly competitive marketplace. It's quite candidate driven, as we call it, which means that there's lots of roles around and not as many qualified candidates. So if it is something that you can invest in terms of upskilling in that space, we'd absolutely recommend that in terms of increasing job opportunities in the future. Wonderful. Keen to allow sort of 10, maybe even 15 minutes for a couple of questions, but next discussion point goes to James. And I know you've sort of covered elements of this in a previous question, but yeah, which areas of public sector work do you expect to experience the most significant growth and demand for skilled professionals as a result of Labour's policies?
So I think I have covered some of this, so I won't go back over old ground. So my thoughts are that I think all of the public sector in one way, shape or form will see growth, not only in central government, which is kind of predominantly my world, but also within local government, the NHS, education. But I think what I'll focus on here are some of the skills that might be in demand across the public sector. I'm not going to sort of talk through technologies and emerging technologies, because I'll just basically be here all day, but I will talk through some of the broader kind of areas or specialisms and skills that I think will be in demand across various areas of the public sector. So I think the first thing I'll talk through here is probably an increase in demand for user experience. So kind of the whole UX, UI, user research, user-centered design space. And I think having knowledge and experience of these principles, the best practices, the ability to kind of design the UCD interfaces and services, and experience in conducting the user research, the usability testing is going to be quite key. Obviously, when we stand up these services, it's the user that's kind of at the heart of what is put together. And so all these things are going to continually be in need. You've then got things like your cloud computing. So understanding those cloud technologies and platforms commonly in central government. And from that perspective, AWS and Azure is kind of quite commonly used. And then having the skills to actually manage the infrastructure and the services, and the ability to implement and optimize these cloud-based solutions are going to be the types of things that the public sector are looking for. The next one is software development and programming. So having various programming languages and skills at your disposal is really useful, especially if you're a contractor. Could be things around Python, Java, C#, for example. And then the experience and the hands-on experience in software development, the application management, and the familiarity with kind of working in an agile development way, and using those type of methodologies and sprints to kind of keep moving that software development forward. One area, I've touched on this earlier, but one area that I think we will see a lot more need for is skills and expertise within artificial intelligence and machine learning concepts. So having the ability to develop and deploy these kind of AI-driven solutions, and having skills in kind of data science and algorithm development. because the more data that is online, it creates more opportunity to work with in a kind of smarter way. And that's what this kind of AI machine learning is kind of about. It's how does a department, or how do a number of departments use the data and the information in a smart way to kind of better and continually improve public services. Then there's cybersecurity. We've talked about cybersecurity, so I'm not going to kind of elaborate on that again. Jim's kind of done a great overview there in terms of how important it's going to be to secure our systems. And then lastly, we won't forget about kind of one of the most important parts of all of this, and kind of the heartbeat of a lot of projects, programs and digital transformation, which actually is the project management and change management side to this. And all of these projects will require having people with the ability to manage and lead digital transformation projects, and have those skills in kind of all of the budgeting, the resource management, and then leading the change and transformation piece through stakeholder engagement, through communications, but also training and supporting staff through those transitions as well. So I think by having a focus in kind of one or some of these areas, depending on kind of where your skill set currently is, perhaps doing some research, developing the skills in your sort of specialist area, getting yourself on training courses, or just learning through a similar or current role you're in, is how you will kind of put yourself in a position where actually your skills are in demand, and therefore what that will do is create lots of opportunities for yourself in the job market.
That's brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, James. Really useful points there. So yeah, just very keen to allow 10 minutes for some questions at the end. We've got a couple that have been sent through. But first of all, as a final discussion topic, wanted to put to Jim how important you think it is for pub sector professionals to understand specifically Labour's manifesto. And, you know, within that, what are the key elements they should focus on?
Yeah, I think, excuse me, I had a good think about this question, and I think it is important. I think it is important to stay on top of where a government is leaning, where, you know, you've got the manifesto, which is black and white, it's very clear in terms of the things that they wanted to say at that time. As I've already mentioned, they're now in power, and it's not that they're going to not deliver those things. There's going to be more, right? It's obvious that there's going to be more that needs to happen to make some of the key decisions that are happening. You know, are they going to match the 2.5% on defence spending? Because that's going to increase spending by a ginormous amount. Where's that money going to come from? So there's all these obvious questions in terms of where the other changes are going to come, and I think just staying abreast of that is really important, and it can help and enhance your own understanding as well. I listen to a lot of podcasts. You know, The Rest Is Money, various different politics podcasts, really useful for just getting sometimes biased, sometimes non-biased opinions about how governments and how people within these departments that are running these departments are making decisions, and what impact that's going to have on the rest of the public sector. So my advice would there be, you know, you don't need to, unless you're really politically inclined, you don't necessarily need to be, you know, reading Labour's website every month or every week or whatever. But I think just my advice would be to listen to podcasts and to you know, stay up to date with political news and things. I think we've covered a lot of what the priorities are for the Labour government. I don't think I need to go over those again. But I think generally staying informed and being adaptable is really important. The amount of sort of leaders in departments in local authorities that I've spoken to over the last few years, the importance that they've outlined to me of being able to work with the civil service to get stuff done is sometimes really challenging. And actually what they often find is finding that one person or that group of people who are willing to sort of put their heads above the parapet and say, right, I'm happy to help. They're the people that are the guys that are going to make the biggest changes, I think. So I think be adaptable, be willing to put your hand up and do something new, possibly, and take the opportunities in this unique situation that we're in at the moment in terms of this new government, because there will be, as I've already outlined, there will be money spent, there will be opportunities that maybe weren't there before. So just staying aware at the moment, keeping your eye on opportunities, and asking questions.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed, Jim. Yeah, really useful insight there, and just good general advice in terms of keeping on top of sort of political initiatives without necessarily having to be too bogged down in the detail, unless unless that's your real interest.
We've all got a day job, right?
Yeah, exactly. So no, thanks very much indeed both for those really useful points. I found those very interesting, and I hope all the attendees did as well. As I mentioned, had a couple of questions sent through, so want to cover those before we finish up at 11. First question was just providing like tips or resources for sort of staying updated on Labour's policy changes and their implications for central government job markets. So a bit of an extension to the point that Jim just mentioned there. But yeah, tips or resources for staying updated on Labour's policy changes. And yeah, I'd like to put that to James, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course. Well, I think I'll contradict Jim's point slightly around the Labour Party's website, because I think their website, it obviously lists all the policies, but it's also going to tell you if there are any changes to what those policies are. It might not necessarily tell you what that means for the central government job market, but you should be able to kind of read between the lines in terms of which department that sits within and potentially how that might impact. So I think, yes, keep up to date with the Labour Party's website. They have social media channels as well, where they put announcements and potentially policy updates. I think you can also subscribe to things like newsletters that you'll get directly to your email. Some of the other things you can do, I mean, it probably what a lot of people are doing anyway, but just keep up to date with the news outlets. And cover kind of the UK politics sort of sections to those, which will give you updates. Some of the ones that are typically quite good at doing that are sort of papers like The Guardian, BBC News. And then I think continue to engage with your sort of peers within your field or kind of your area, and kind of share information and insights about these changes and potentially what they could mean in kind of the grander scheme of things. And then you've got things like LinkedIn. So you can connect with experts on LinkedIn, or people again within your field. You can join relevant groups, which might be good in terms of sharing information with you that might give you an idea in terms of what that means for the government job market. But also you can speak with us here at Keystream and keep in touch with people like myself and Jim, and we can update you on the market in terms of what we see on a day-to-day basis, whether that's updating you on programs and projects that are about to be stood up, whether there are current job opportunities. These are all sort of the types of things that we can discuss with you and sort of talk to you about. So in my view, I think the more you know about the government landscape and the initiatives, the more likely you are to know where the changes will be, and therefore where the opportunities will be. But like I say, Jim and I are very open to having conversations around that sort of landscape and what the policies and changes might be, and obviously how that affects the job market and the opportunities.
Brilliant. Thank you, James. And thank you for that offer there of, discussions around some of those changes. I've had a question.
We're not all called James, are we? Just to clarify.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think we're three or four in the office. Question's been sent through from Emanuela. Thank you very much, Emanuela. And I think something that I was keen to discuss today anyway, so really interesting question, is Emanuela is currently working in the private sector and is looking to transition to the public sector, particularly within a policy advisor role. What do you recommend that she does in order to make this transition? And I'd say that from, hopefully some of these themes could apply for someone with NHS experience looking to move into government, and just that sort of effort that candidates can put in to make that transition. And I wondered, Jim, if you'd be able to pass your comments on that, please.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's an important question. I think sometimes there's a feeling within the marketplace of chicken and egg. It can be difficult to break into the public sector. Maybe less so the opposite way around. It kind of feels like within the public, it can feel like, I'm hopefully going to break this myth in a minute, but it can feel like it's more difficult to get into the public sector because there's smaller networks or whatever, or internal candidates, or it's more difficult to understand the recruitment process because there are, it's not as clear as working with a private sector organisation maybe. I think I think recruitment companies are really important for this, really important. And I think, I won't get into what some people have said to me about what they think about recruitment companies, but I'll stay on the positives. But we're all very proud of what we do here at Keystream, and other colleagues within other organisations that I know who do a good job as well. But we are focused as Keystream on engaging with these different organisations, on keeping up to date with the leaders of these businesses, the organisations that are trying to make these changes, and they are the people that often need the advice and the expertise of the people from the private sector. So maybe people like yourself, Emanuela, you could be a great fit for one of our clients. So engage with us is what I would say. Talk to us, let us know what your skill sets are, where you want to go, and we can help you. And I think, it's the old adage of communication is key, but sometimes it can very much be about who you know. It is definitely about what you know as well. So I'm not saying what you know doesn't matter. I think sometimes you can apply for a job within a department or within a local government or whatever, and you can get lucky and get that job. Great, keep doing that stuff. Sometimes you just need to keep at it. But engaging with organisations like us that put the hours in to develop these relationships with these government departments and public sector organisations, I think can be really, really helpful to you. So just engage with us, and we'll engage with you.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, Jim. I think we've just got time for one final question before we finish the session today. Jim, was going to put this one to you as well. Obviously, I know both Jim and James have, as I mentioned at the start of the session, have operated in this sector for many years and have seen certainly a couple of sort of previous general elections in the past and experienced how that sort of impacted digital transformation projects. I wondered how long has it taken in the past for these new government initiatives to impact digital transformation projects? Sometimes there's a feeling in the public sector that there can be quite a significant delay in terms of how these changes actually manifest on the ground. I just wondered if you could draw on previous experiences to say sort of time frames for when we would expect that impact, or how long we would expect that impact to take place.
Yeah, I mean, I could just give you a one-liner and say how long's a piece of string, but I'll try and give you a more informed answer. I came into recruitment in 2012, so that's 2 years after the 2010 general election, where there was a hung parliament at one point, and then the Lib Dems and Conservatives had to go in a coalition, and there was lots of rolling back on spending and things. So you could say that I came into recruitment in a difficult time, but I think the public sector generally, I think most people would agree that working recruitment in public sector would agree that public sector is a place where there's generally projects do get funding. It just sometimes takes a bit of time, but the things need to keep going, and so that's often why contractors do so well in the public sector, because there's so many changes that are happening that contractors often fill that void. I'm trying to answer your question. I think another point I wanted to make on this as well is when I joined, my boss at the time in 2012 had been through the Labour government as well, at the start of the Labour government prior. Huge investments into the public sector, the last Labour government, and they were in a much more positive financial situation. But as I said, previously, I think this Labour government, it's not as gloomy as everyone thinks. I think there is money. I think the economy is creeping its way back up. We aren't in a disaster like a lot of the media sometimes wants to tell us. It is getting better, and so I think there is going to be more money spent. Where that's going to be coming from is difficult to know. I think my final point, and just to try and be as clear as possible, it will take a few months, I think, for this government to really get an understanding of where things are happening. But they've already made some big decisions. They've already started. So I think if you're looking to change career, if you're looking to invest, now's the time to do it, because the next year is going to be really interesting in terms of investment. I hope that helps. I'm not sure if it was completely clear.
Brilliant, Jim. Thank you. And thanks to some of the comments there. Thanks to your comments, Simon. Thanks for the kind word, Mike, as well, in terms of your positive experience with Keystream in the past. And just wanted to thank again everyone for joining today. We really enjoyed the discussion. I think James has mentioned this a couple of times before, which is that please do reach out to Jim or James if you want any particular advice, whether it's on an individual basis or general discussion topics around Labour's new initiatives and how they're going to impact sort of change in major digital transformation projects. So yeah, thanks very much indeed everyone for joining. Have a great rest of the day, and please get in touch with us if you need any support or assistance. Thanks guys. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.